Picture yourself vanished, not lost but absent, for 8 long years. Your discovery isn't in a forest or at the bottom of a lake, but in an abandoned mine, sealed internally from within. You are found seated, resting against a wall beside your beloved. It seems like you have merely dozed off, yet you are deceased and your leg bones bear the marks of breakage. This isn't a tale spun by horror films. It is Sarah and Andrew's true story, a narrative about how their 3-day desert excursion morphed into an 8-year enigma, unveiling a terror far surpassing anyone's wildest imaginations. This tale unfolded in 2011. Sarah and Andrew were an average couple residing in Colorado. She was 26, he was 28. They weren't adrenaline junkies or seasoned survivalists. They were simply a pair who cherished each other and desired a weekend away from urban life. Their plan was as straightforward as it gets. Travel to Utah's desert expanse in their aged yet dependable vehicle, camp for 3 days and 2 nights, capture scenic vistas, and spend time together. Their chosen destination was near a region once bustling with uranium mining activity during the mid-20th century. Today, it hosts abandoned mines, corroded machinery, and roads erased from contemporary maps. To them, this locale held an allure of the extraordinary, offering an opportunity for distinct photography. They sought neither thrill nor danger. Prior to their Friday departure, Sarah penned a note to her sibling, "Departing, return on Sunday evening, miss you." This was the final communication sent to their kin. Their preparations included water, rations, a tent, sleeping bags, standard travel gear. They carried no specialized mining equipment or similar items, as they had no plans for such exploration. Dear friends, please help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Click the like button and subscribe to our channel so that no more tourists get lost. Over the weekend, their fascination lay solely with the sunset vistas of the desert. Sunday night arrived, but Sarah and Andrew didn't return. Initially, there was no sense of urgency. Perhaps they were delayed. Maybe signal issues existed somewhere. Such incidents occur. However, when neither showed up for work on Monday, their family members raised the alarm. Calls to their phones went straight to voicemail. Contacts confirmed they had traveled to Utah, near the old mine sites. Immediately, the family contacted the authorities, prompting a search and rescue operation that same day. Initially, everyone held on to hope. Police, volunteers, many people scoured the area. The Utah desert is vast, almost boundless. It's filled with canyons, rocks, and dry riverbeds. Finding 2 individuals here is like searching for a needle in a haystack. Those in vehicles and ATVs checked all known and abandoned roads. For hours, a helicopter surveyed the region in search of any trace, a vehicle, a tent, a fire pit. Yet days passed, yielding no clues whatsoever. Not one sighting of their car, no reports of a pair resembling them. It was as if they had been swallowed by the ether moments after departing their city. As hope waned with each day, it became evident that the arid climate tolerates few errors. By day, the heat was oppressive, and at night, chilly. If they exhausted their water or merely lost their way, their survival prospects diminished by the minute. The authorities started to ponder alternate scenarios. Perhaps they never arrived in Utah. Maybe they chose to abandon their old lives for a fresh start. However, this theory was soon discarded. Their accounts remained untouched. Their credit cards were unused. They had entrusted their pets at home and asked a neighbor for care. Those who intend to vanish forever do not make such arrangements. The criminal angle also seemed implausible. In a remote, barely populated locale, the area seemed desolate. The possibility of an unexpected assault was minuscule. The investigation stretched for nearly a week, with volunteers and family members persevering, yet the police were readying to conclude the active phase of the operation. On the 7th day, just as hope waned, a helicopter pilot detected a glimmer in the sunlight. It wasn't merely a glint, it was blinking lights. The car belonging to Sarah and Andrew was discovered. It sat parked on one of those seldom-seen roads that barely showed up on the ground. This road led towards old uranium mines and terminated after a few miles. The car was smack in the middle of the path, as if left abruptly. The first thing that struck the team upon arrival was the flashing hazard lights. The battery was almost drained, and the lights flickered dimly. It was peculiar. Hazard lights are activated during a breakdown or stop. When the vehicle halted, Sarah and Andrew were positioned beside it. Upon inspection, the police discovered no indications of a burglary or accident damage. The doors remained unlocked. Inside, items appeared undisturbed, as if the proprietors had briefly stepped out. A map of the vicinity rested on the passenger seat near an empty water bottle. Authorities found Andrew's phone within the glove compartment. Subsequent examination disclosed no missed calls or attempts to dial emergency services or close contacts. The battery retained more than half its charge, yet the crucial find was the navigation system. It was activated and displayed a path leading further along this desolate road to one of the abandoned mines. This discovery fostered hope, but also sparked additional queries. Could they not make calls? Maybe there was no cellular signal in the region, and they knew it. But then why leave the vehicle? Police confirmed an empty fuel tank. They stopped due to exhausting their gas supply. Activating hazard lights made them more visible. Yet, the subsequent direction and purpose of the navigator's gesture toward a certain mine remained unclear. Perhaps it was hoped for help or sun protection. Intrigued by this discovery, the search party promptly proceeded along the designated path. They navigated through a barely discernible trail scorched by the sun, finding no inhabitants except the wind and the solitude of the desert. Following a few miles, they arrived at their destination, an entrance to an ancient uranium mine. The descent was unremarkable, with rusty debris scattered across rocks. Although cramped, it was accessible for a person to pass through. Despite meticulously examining their surroundings, the searchers discovered no indications, no leftovers, belongings, or recent signs of human presence. Over the last few days, traces of footsteps could have been obscured by wind and sand. The rescuers called out their names repeatedly into the mine's depth, but they received no answer except an eerie silence. Proceeding further without specialized equipment was perilously risky. Old mines are intricate networks where a collapse might occur at any time, or you could be exposed to harmful gases that have accumulated over time. A search of the surrounding areas also proved fruitless. They meticulously examined every square meter within several miles from the car and mine entrance. There were no traces of tents, sleeping bags, campfires, or anything at all. It was baffling. If they had run out of gas, it would have been logical for them to set up a camp near the vehicle and wait for assistance. Or if they had gone in search of help, they would have taken some essentials with them, such as water. However, their basic equipment, the tent, sleeping bags, food supplies, seemed to have vanished without a trace, just like Sarah and Andrew themselves. After this finding, the extensive hunt persisted for several additional days, yet yielded no results. The authorities refrained from sending individuals into the precarious mine without concrete evidence that the couple was within, as it would have been an unwarranted risk. Slowly, the search operation was terminated. Sarah and Andrew's case was categorized as missing. Their photographs were displayed on bulletin boards and featured in local newspapers. Their families retained private investigators, but they too found no fresh leads. Months turned into years. The tale of Sarah and Andrew evolved into one of those haunting legends shared around campfires, a riddle shrouded in desert grime. It appeared as though no one would ever uncover the solution to the enigma surrounding their fate. The car with an empty gas tank and a GPS pointing towards a dark crevice in the rock remained the solitary, mute witnesses to their final voyage. For 8 long years, complete silence reigned over this case. 8 years have elapsed. The tale of Sarah and Andrew has mainly turned into an enigma unsolved for many, serving as a sobering reminder of the perils lurking in wilderness. Their bereaved families have been left with an unhealed wound and no closure, as answers remained elusive. The case lay dormant in the archives, tagged as cold, until it was stirred up again by 2 local residents in 2019. Seeking additional income, they ventured into collecting scrap metal from the remnants of old uranium mines. On a scorching autumn day, they traversed the same abandoned roads where they had previously discovered the couple's car and headed towards the very mine that Andrew's navigator had indicated. Due to its size rather than any specific knowledge, they sought this location for abundant metal. Upon arrival, they observed what searchers had noted 8 years prior: a hole in the rock strewn with waste. However, something was amiss. Previously littered with debris, the entrance now appeared sealed. A large, rusty sheet of thick metal had been hauled here and seemingly secured, stacked with stones and beams on top. This seemed unusual. Mines are typically left open or filled with concrete and warnings. Instead, it appeared someone rushed to conceal something or prevent entry. For the metal scavengers, this sheet represented their quarry. They carried a gas cutter for the task. After numerous hours in the heat, they carved a passage through the sheet large enough to crawl under. Upon completion, the opening exhaled stale, chilly, and motionless air. In a chamber sealed for years, a man illuminated its stone walls and floor littered with pebbles, penetrating deeper with his flashlight into the dark. Then, the light halted, revealing two figures in the distance, around 15 meters from the entrance. They were seated on the ground, their backs against the wall, heads slightly bowed, and surprisingly close to each other. Initially, the man presumed they were mannequins or debris resembling humans. Upon calling out to his partner, they both stared in silence at the dark chamber. One of them whispered, "Those are people." No panic surfaced, only shock echoed. The stillness suggested an unnatural calmness. In the mine, there was no trace of struggle or blood, merely two individuals who appeared to have taken a break and dozed off in the fresh air. However, both knew that sleeping in an enclosed mine was unusual. They quickly drove several miles to find cell service and contacted the authorities. The revelation of the discovery in the antiquated mine sent ripples throughout the state. Police officers who had worked on Sarah and Andrew's case 8 years prior instantly recognized the location. A team of investigators and forensic experts was dispatched to the site. Working conditions were challenging, as the air was musty and the place was ominous in its quietude. The scene they encountered matched the descriptions of metal hunters. Two figures, a male and female, were found slumped against the wall. Their clothing, ordinary hiking attire, had deteriorated with age but remained intact. No personal belongings were nearby, no backpacks, no supplies, just bare rock and dust. The corpses remained well preserved within the mine's dry atmosphere, maintaining their positions as discovered. Subsequently, DNA tests confirmed the grim finding. It was Sarah and Andrew. After 8 long years of searching, the enigma surrounding their whereabouts had been unraveled. However, with this revelation, a more chilling mystery surfaced. What transpired within that mine? The probe commenced, scrutinizing the scene and the bodies meticulously. Immediately, anomalies emerged that defied logical reasoning. There were no indications of violence or struggle, such as cuts, bullet wounds, or signs of a fight. Additionally, their demeanor was peculiar. They sat calmly, devoid of panic, attempts to escape, or calls for help. During their stationary position, a startling truth came to light during the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner. Both Sarah and Andrew displayed broken bones in their lower limbs, specifically multiple fractures of shins and feet. These severe injuries suggested they didn't occur independently. Such injuries typically result from falling from significant heights. However, their peaceful posture and lack of other injuries presented a puzzling picture. It was then the investigators observed the mine structure. The opening made by the metal hunters was horizontal, but above where Sarah and Andrew were sitting, there was another shaft in the ceiling, a vertical passage leading upwards towards the surface. This discovery sparked a chilling hypothesis. Sarah and Andrew hadn't entered the mine via the side entrance. They had fallen into it, possibly through the hidden vertical shaft that could have been covered by bushes or boards on the surface. They traveled several meters and collided onto a stone surface, shattering their limbs. Though alive, they were confined to immobility. They couldn't rise nor move. They were imprisoned. However, this account primarily described the injuries. It omitted the crucial details. It didn't clarify who barricaded the side exit or why. Inspectors scrutinized meticulously the metal sheet that obstructed the entrance. The inspection revealed that it was affixed to the rock using a proficient welding machine. Moreover, the welding technique suggested it was done internally, yet no machinery was found within the mine. Not a welding device, nor a generator, not even a rudimentary hammer, nothing. It seemed implausible. An individual covertly entered the mine, welded the sole exit from within, and then inexplicably disappeared, leaving behind no tools. The absence of struggle signs now seemed more ominous. If they had been attacked, they would have resisted, but if they had injured themselves and became immobilized, they were utterly defenseless. Anyone discovering them in such a state could have taken any action against them, but someone chose an unfathomable act of cruelty. This individual found them injured and defenseless, yet instead of assisting them, they decided to entomb them alive. They moved a metal barrier to the side exit, welded it shut, sentencing Sarah and Andrew to a prolonged death by starvation and dehydration in utter darkness. The notion was so heinous that it seemed unreal. This wasn't mere negligence or an accident. It was a calculated, cold-hearted murder that stretched over several days. The police were not on the lookout for any ordinary criminal. They were hunting someone familiar with the area, someone who knew about this mine, its vertical shaft, and the side exit. Maybe this person had set the trap at the surface they had fallen into, and they knew how to erase their traces and disappear unnoticed, possibly through some concealed crevice or ventilation shaft known only to them. The investigation, initially cold, escalated to top priority. The objective now for the police was to apprehend the perpetrator who had transformed an old mine into a burial site for two innocent victims. This individual remained elusive somewhere. For 2 years they labored on the case. Suspects were scant, those who knew enough about these mines and possessed welding equipment suitable for use in such isolated areas. The investigators finally acted in 2013 as they should have done earlier. They began to excavate all property and lease records regarding these unoccupied tracts. Most of the mines belonged to no one, but some parcels, including where Sarah and Andrew lost their lives, were on long-term lease to an individual in his 60s, living secluded on a small ranch a few dozen miles away. He had been leasing the land for years, supposedly for geological research, though he carried out no substantial activity there. People nearby deemed him antisocial and private, displeased at anyone entering his property. He frequently clashed with vacationers or hunters straying onto his land. This was the initial solid clue the police had stumbled upon in all this time. They secured a warrant for his house and premises. The man, himself the property's proprietor, met the police without astonishment, but with obvious animosity. He refuted everything, claiming ignorance about any vanished tourists and having not been near that mine zone for several years. However, during an examination of his workshop, investigators discovered something that left him speechless. A cluster of keys dangled from a nail amongst a heap of antiquated tools. These were the keys to the old padlocks on the barriers obstructing some mine entrances. Moreover, tucked under a stack of ancient bills in a desk drawer was a yellowed scroll rolled into a tube. The map wasn't merely a representation of the surrounding area. It was a precise schematic of several mine interiors, including one particular one. The diagram indicated not only the primary entrance and vertical shaft, but also numerous narrow ventilation conduits, some of which even the mining supervision team were unaware. One such passage led to the surface, approximately a mile from the main entrance, offering an explanation for the murderer's mysterious disappearance after locking the exit from within. He had his own hidden escape route. Upon being presented with this diagram, he admitted his involvement, yet not with remorse. He recounted the sequence of events in a dull, detached manner. That day, he was patrolling his territory when he heard screams. He traced the source and discovered 2 people inside the mine who had fallen into an old pit that he himself had once blocked with decaying boards to keep animals away. He observed they were still alive but injured. They were strangers, trespassers on his land. In his warped thoughts, they were not victims but an issue. He didn't converse with them. Instead, he walked away in silence. He retreated to his ranch, grabbed a welding machine and a generator, loaded everything into his pickup truck, and drove towards the side entrance of the mine. In his mind, he was not causing their demise. He perceived himself as safeguarding his property. Upon arrival, he welded the exit shut to prevent unauthorized access. He acknowledged blocking the entrance, but maintained innocence regarding murder, instead blaming the victims for trespassing on his land. He merely locked the door behind the intruders. The knowledge that two injured individuals were perishing in darkness and suffering beyond the door seemed irrelevant to him. The trial was brief. There was an abundance of evidence. Prosecutors did not level a direct charge of intentional homicide, as it was challenging to prove his intention to kill. In the verdict, it was declared intentional neglect leading to the deaths of two individuals. For discovering wounded Sarah and Andrew, but instead choosing to doom them to a painful demise by sealing them in a stone sack, he received an 18-year prison sentence. After almost a decade, the mystery that had haunted everyone was finally resolved. It wasn't mystical forces of the desert or film serial killers that were behind their inexplicable disappearance. The only culprit was an individual whose paranoid hostility towards strangers overpowered ordinary human empathy. The tale of Sarah and Andrew did not conclude on the day they vanished, or even when their bodies were found. It ended when justice identified the person who left them to perish in the cold, dark abyss of a deserted mine.